Hi everybody, welcome to another Q&A session, and really happy to see you all. And it's always really exciting for me to get to know your questions, because a lot of the times I actually learn new things, which is fantastic. Your questions are excellent. Welcome, my friends. And as people are coming on, which I appreciate so much, love to hear from where you're coming from. And also, as usual, I have to, cut off sometimes a lot of questions that don't get answered. So I have a couple that we'll begin with. And one thing is this. And for anyone who does any amount of baking or cooking, you know what these are. And we get them at the dollar store or whatever. And they're very cheap. And I don't even know what they're called because I don't do any baking. It's my wonderful two daughters who do all the baking. But anyway, this works as a really effective reflector. So what I advise is that people just go to their dollar store, or you can get these, of course, at any grocery store. And they have an amazing reflective ability. And let me just show you a little bit of different ways that you can reflect. Now, it's true, because they're a little bit small, they wouldn't be all that great for upper body, but these would be more for headshots, especially if you're in a situation where you want to do a headshot out of studio or even in studio. So keep that in mind. This is a really good tip. It's one of the cheapest reflectors you can get. And you can shape it as well. You can shape it in order to have a couple different ways to reflect light onto a face, but that's not all. It's extremely good for product photography because you can shape it as well. Now, I often advise Bristol board is really good, and these things. And also, very soon, my friend Kelly Lawson and I are putting out a product photography online course, and I'll tell you more about that later. So welcome everybody. It's good to see you all. Hello from New York. Love New York. Bangalore, India. So I've been to Bangalore, and it was one of my greatest trips ever. Ponkshiadi. I'm very happy that I have a Bangalore friend online. Okay. Lori, welcome. Let me know where you guys are from. Question marks below. Feel free to ask anything that you want. Could be apps, could be lenses, could be your next purchase, could be anything that you want. Hello from Nepal. Yes, Divine Studio NP, welcome. What's the difference? What's the difference between the reflector colors? Mary asks. Great question. So whenever you want true tone, you would use a white reflector, or of course, this metal reflector that I just explained. However, because Bristol board comes in many different colors, if you go to the local art supply store or your dollar store, you can see red, green, blue, all these. And these are to reflect color cast into your product. And it's not all that common that you'd use them for headshots, to be honest. However, for product photography, and even food, I guess, having a colored Bristol board to reflect that colored light back onto your subject matter could be really cool. And that would create a two-tone effect. So yeah, because Bristol board is so cheap, and you can get 2 for $1 as far as I can tell from my local dollar store, just get one color of each and just see how that color reflects light back into the product that you're doing. By the way, because we are a lot of us are indoors most of the time, this is the perfect time to get to know studio photography inside your own house. And these Bristol boards can really do well to reflect light that you're getting from your window. Really good question. Okay, Yusuf, welcome. Thanks, Mark, for the personal note. I'm happy to do so. Greetings from Morocco. I can smell the spices right now. Good morning from Colorado. Hey, everybody. From India. A lot of great Indian friends. Cynthia, Why do you expose the subject properly on a camera when shooting against a light source like a window? Or how do you, sorry. I tried to shoot my wedding dress against the window and that dress was underexposed. I had to edit. Yes, in fact, I saw that picture and I commented on it. Whenever we're shooting against what we call backlighting, we have to overexpose the picture. Now, let's just, for example, what I'd like you to do is pretend that you are inside your living room, you have a big picture window, and between yourself or your camera and the picture window, you have your subject. And your subject could be a person, it could be a vase, it could be a set of flowers. I guarantee you that the picture is not going to work. In fact, the exposure on your subject is going to be very dark. And this is what Cinderbug is talking about. So what we do in aperture priority or shutter priority or whatever mode we're in, actually it's mostly shutter or aperture priority, and P works as well, by the way. We are going to use what's called exposure compensation. That's the dial that goes from minus to plus, makes the picture brighter or darker. This is extremely necessary, otherwise that backlight, where the light from behind the subject is far more powerful, it's going to make your subject matter look dark. So I would suggest going to +1 or +2 if necessary, depending on how light or how dark your living room is. Okay, so I hope that helps. And it's a lot of people are tempted to rectify this by turning on their indoor lights, like the normal lamps inside their living room. And this can be effective, but the problem is that indoor lighting is usually tungsten based or the newer fluorescent lighting. And that means that you're going to get a little bit of a different lighting scenario with regards to white balance. So you could get orange light on your subject, but then blue light coming in from the window. I tend to prefer to turn off the lights, to be honest, and only allow window light to illuminate the subject. And that would be side window light or just that backlighting. And then I use my overexpose or my exposure compensation to make that picture a bit brighter. I hope that helped. Okay. Welcome everyone. Martin. Saskatchewan. Good to see you. Yusuf. Mark, do you agree or disagree with editing images over so many applications? It really ruins the overall resolution. Like I use Snapseed and PS Express over Lightroom. Yeah, so every time that you save a JPEG, you reduce your quality. And further, if you flip between many different apps, some apps will not resave at full resolution, full quality. Now, it's true that some apps will allow you to program in the settings that all exports or all saving should be done at full JPEG quality. That's good. You should definitely check that. So when you're using apps, make sure that you go into settings, and if they have a saving feature or saving settings, make sure that it's the highest quality. But even still, it's true what you said, Yusuf, that when you go flip from app to app, you are, with each generation of save, you're reducing quality. Now, one thing you keep in mind is that even though that's true, because most people look at our photos online, and they're probably not zooming in 100%, it's probably not going to be visible to the naked eye, to your average viewer. So I wouldn't be too concerned. Now, if you are planning on printing those images, then maybe it's an issue, especially if you're printing large. But I would say that if you feel that you need 2 or 3 apps for that one picture to make it just the way that you want to, I would say don't be afraid, go for it, because people probably won't see much of a difference in the quality. However, you probably will if you're very critically looking at it full screen 100% on your computer. So it's a give and take. I would say that you're probably safe to do it, but maybe if you want super quality and you're printing really large, then maybe you would stick to just 2 apps at the most. Excellent question. Abby Maverick, welcome. Lucy Wang, NG, welcome. Thank you. I struggle with backlighting and dealing with shadows. It's not an easy light to work with. That's true. So what I would suggest then is try side lighting. So you have, let's just say you have your picture window and you have your wedding dress. Then put the wedding dress so that it's 90 degrees to your window. And that will provide a nice texture, actually. Give that a try. Photo Connect joined, welcome. Love to know where you guys are from. Vivmog, hi Mark. Shooting an eagle in a nest using 150 to 600 millimeter Sigma lens, which is a good lens, by the way. If anyone is into photography for like sports or safari or wildlife, I hear that's a good lens. I've never used it, but I hear good results. When using shutter priority at 1000 handheld, pictures were blurry. Is it better to use aperture over f8 on a tripod? Yeah, good question. Now the reason it's blurry is because even at 1/1000, it's very difficult to handhold that lens. It's a bigger lens, and at 600, it's going to be very tricky. I would suggest going to 1/2000 and making sure that you have I'd like you to switch over to shutter priority. Now this is not the case for everyone, but this is certainly a case for anyone who has a very extreme telephoto lens like Vivmog does. Okay, so shutter priority, 1/2000, handheld, auto ISO, and you should be all set. Okay, so that's the recipe for you. This is not the recipe for anyone else. I'm just talking about Vivmog's question specifically, because otherwise I usually suggest aperture priority. Now, I would also suggest that when you're in shutter priority, your camera's going to automatically choose your lowest f-stop number possible, which for your lens, I think is an f5.6, or it could be wrong. Now, the question about tripod. Yes, you will have better results using a tripod generally. However, because a lot of wildlife photographers don't have the luxury of using a tripod, they tend to use monopods, because that gives you a lot more flexibility with really quickly moving the camera around to get that shot of that bird that's flying very quickly. So it's a little bit tricky to use a tripod. However, if you can, then that's great. And also wildlife photographers have a gimbal head. And gimbal heads are really good because it allows for your camera to be 100% flexible really quickly. You can move around. However, you still have a certain amount of stability because that tripod legs and the gimbal head are solid. Okay? Now, they're not still, but I'm just saying that they're solid. So there won't be that vertical movement because of camera shake based on your hands. So keep that in mind. The gimbal head works well. And shutter priority, 1/2000, auto ISO, and it should be the situation where you'll be able to get really good wildlife photos. Give that a try. Due East Photography, welcome my friend. MF Binet 93. Okay, Ponxia D. I have completed your course Digital Photography Mastery. However, sometimes I don't find my photos few days after I click. Do you recommend any resource for compositions? I don't find my photos few days after I click. If you could just reword that, I'd really appreciate it because I don't completely understand. Are you talking about Digital Camera Mastery's Facebook page? If so, let me know. And if it's something completely different, I'm happy to help. Dewey's Photography says, hi Mark. Welcome Levi. Okay, Mary, about reflectors. Should I use them to decrease the shade in the product that I'm shooting, for example, or is it used to decrease the harshness of the light? Both. Yeah, so let me show you. I love real Japanese green tea. So here's my Japanese green tea container. Actually, it's where I keep my microphones. So when I drink the green tea, I use these for gear. And then the reflector, let's just say we're using this as our product. The reflector, obviously, I would use to reflect light on the shadow area. So, for example, if I'm doing backlight, say, for example, right now, you can see that this is sort of the shadow area, whereas this would be the bright area coming from natural light. And the reflector is going to fill in this area here if I want it, but it's also going to reduce contrast. Now, if you don't want to reduce contrast, then we're getting into something called low-key lighting, or we would say that dramatic, dark, graphic look, and then we don't need reflectors at all. So we use reflectors when we like something called high-key lighting, and that's really happy, really light, good-looking, high-key lighting. And that's where those reflectors come in really handy. Okay, Sal Abdul Halim, hello, welcome to you. Tutan Barui, hi Mark, I'm planning to buy a camera, Sony a7 III or Fujifilm X-T4. What would you recommend? I would go for the X-T4. The only reason being is that I know the Fujifilm line inside out, and I'm a big Fujifilm fan, and I know that the X-T4 is a brilliant camera. Now, if you wouldn't mind writing back in the comment section and just tell me what genre of photography you love and what you'll be doing mostly, I can probably help you a little bit further with the Sony a7 III or Fujifilm X-T4 question, okay? The X-T4, by the way, is water resistant, or they call it weather resistant, WR, and that's really helpful. And I don't know, to be honest, if the Sony a7 III is weather sealed. It probably is, but I'm not completely sure. Okay, Andreas, welcome. Let me know where you guys are coming from. I'd love to hear. Okay, sometimes I don't find my photos good few days after clicking. Sorry for a typo before. Do you recommend composition resources to improve photography? I am an enthusiast. Well, if you've already taken my digital camera mastery course, so that did help with a little bit of composition. However, I do have a photography course called Photo Shortcuts, and that has 50 different ways to photograph 50 different scenes, and that's at my website, markhemmings.com. That might help. However, a free resource is simply going through my entire collection of photos here on my Instagram, because every photo has a lesson, and most of them are on composition. Also, another free resource that I have for all of you is my YouTube page has 162 free lessons. These are free photo lessons, and a lot of them have to do with composition. And my YouTube YouTube page is Mark Hemmings Photography School. So throw in that school at the end when you're doing that search in YouTube. And there's a ton of great content that's for free, that's really made for you guys. And so give that a check. So I have a lot of free resources and a dedicated course called Photography Shortcuts on my website, markhemmings.com, which should be able to be a great help to you. Thanks for that great question. Okay, welcome everyone, VR Snaps. Mark Fowler, good to see you, my friend. Mark, I'm outside, and it's a little bit chilly, but because everyone is inside, either doing schoolwork or normal work. Alessandra, welcome. Abhishek, welcome. Jamie, Mohammed, good to see you guys. Where are you coming from? Love to hear from it. What country you're coming from. Hi Mark, I'm finding a lot of my shots coming out soft with my Sony 18-105 on Sony a6000. Do you have any experience with this lens and any recommendations? I have experience with the a6000. I've used a couple of them for time-lapse, and also the 18-105 as well. And it's true that you're not going to get the super sharpness that you would expect from a Sony, and I'm actually surprised, because Sony lenses should be better than that. And I was a little bit disappointed with it myself, to be honest. So what I would do, this is for AMIC91 and anyone who has the Sony a6000, is do a little test. What I'd like you to do is photograph the exact same object at the lowest f-stop number, which I think for that lens might be f3.5 or f2.8, I'm not sure. Then do the exact same picture at f8, and then the exact same picture at f22. And make sure that it's something that is simple. And when I'm talking about simple, take a look at the lattice work on my deck here. That's what you would want to use as a test. You don't want to photograph a subject. And the reason being is I want you to test your lens by looking at the perimeter, the sides of the picture. So that would be, so photograph a wall, a brick wall, or something like that, at all three of those apertures, using aperture priority, and it doesn't matter what ISO, to be honest. As long as you have a good sharp picture. Choose auto ISO, okay? Auto ISO, aperture priority, f3.5, f8, and f22. And then I want you to look at the perimeter of those pictures on your full screen at 100% and just ask yourself, am I getting sharpness at the edges of the frame at f8? Am I getting it at the lowest f-stop number? Am I getting it at f22? And if the answer is no to all, there could be a problem. If it's really bad, if it's really unsharp, then it may be a problem with your lens needing to be calibrated. If it's just slightly defocused or slightly blurry on the edges, it's no doubt, the A6000 is a good camera. However, it is a consumer version, and maybe that sharpness is just a lack of overall sharpness because it's a consumer version camera. Anyway, I'd like to help you further. So after you do that test, come back online, maybe tomorrow or the next day or whatever, and we'll see, and let me know how that test turned out. Vivmog, thanks for the Eagle answer. One more thing, please. Should I put on landscape or portrait for the Eagle picture? Thanks again. Oh yeah, well that's a good question. You don't need to bother. One of those modes is not really critical. What is more probably better is a sports mode. So that Running Man sports mode, if you have that. And if you don't, for your autofocus, you may choose AFC. That's autofocus continuous, and you'll find that probably on the front of your camera. That's my suggestion. Jose Dominguez, welcome. David, good to see you, my friend. Hope all is well. And David, throw out some questions if you want. Kelsey Charmaine. By the way, David was on my cruise photo workshop, and we had a great time, didn't we, David? Going around the Caribbean photographing. Okay, welcome everybody. Nito Avila. Hi Mark, I haven't had a chance to catch your broadcast live. Been working a lot, thank God. Looking forward to going to Jerusalem. Yes, and David, by the way, thank you for reminding me, David. And I apologize everyone for the sales pitch here. It's not really, but David brings this up. He's actually scheduled to come with me on my Jerusalem photo workshop, which is scheduled for September, and it's still a go as long as Israel and my Canadian government has the thumbs up for travel. Then we're going to do a photo workshop for a week in stunning Jerusalem, and you can find that at markhemmings.com, and I have a whole bunch of photo workshops lined up for the end of this year and 2021. I'd love for any of you guys to come on the photo workshops. They're a lot of fun, great food, great photography, and really new great friendships like I have with David. Andrea's Bondum, comments are welcomed. That's a really good name for Instagram. I like that. Okay, my name is Rose from Manila, Philippines. I love my Filipino friends, and you're always welcome, and I'm always happy to get questions from you guys. Name, okay, Nimi Thandria, welcome. Regarding buying a new camera between the Sony a7 III or Fujifilm X-T4, I'm more into landscape photography. Okay, so the X-T4 is brilliant. I think it's a 26 megapixel if I'm not mistaken, or 24. I think it may be a 24. The A7 III is brilliant as well. However, because I haven't actually taken a picture with the A7 III, I'm going to have to go with the X-T4. The X-T4 looks better. I know that means nothing, but aesthetically it's a cooler looking camera. It's weather resistant. It's brilliant for travel and street photography, and it's smaller and lighter than this Sony. That's why I would choose the X-T4. So I hope that helps. Welcome, Alessandra. Thanks for the wave. Mark, thank you for answering the questions. If I would like to learn more about the reflectors and lighting, can you suggest some books or tutorials? Yes. So again, I apologize for the salesy answer here, but I do go into reflectors quite a bit in Digital Camera Mastery and Photo Shortcuts. Those are the online courses. However, I would actually, Mary, in about a month's time or earlier, I have a new course on creating it's going to be an online course and it's going to be about product photography and how to create those in your own house using reflectors, and how reflectors are a cheap and inexpensive but very effective way to photograph products, to photograph fashion for people who have a store that want to photograph their own clothing, for doing still life and all those things. And I'm really looking forward to coming out. That's going to be with Kelly Lawson, who's a friend of mine, a local photographer who's excellent at creating businesses and helping business owners, small business owners, create their own amazing photographs. So I'll keep you guys all informed with that. And other than that, I'm not sure, but I'm sure just by looking YouTube for reflector photography would come up with some great resources as well. Thanks for that question. Thanks for answering my question. I shall surely check Photography Shortcut and check your YouTube channel as well. First time ever I participated in live Q&A, and I'm satisfied by your answers. Excellent. Well, feel free to ask anything else, and I'm always happy to help. Okay, welcome guys. For those who just joined, Q&A session, ask anything you want. Photo, video, lens, equipment, what to buy next. I'm always happy to help. And I'd love to hear from where you are coming from, anywhere in the world. Welcome guys. Hello from Germany. I've never been, for my German friends, it was a thrill when I was just out of university. I was hitchhiking. I mentioned this story the other day. From Kiel to Hamburg on the Autobahn, going at insane speeds in someone who picked me up in a very fast Mercedes. It was such a thrill to have no speed limit. Unlike our Canadian speed limits. Actually, our speed limits are 110 kilometers an hour, which I think is even a little bit faster than America. Soterios, welcome. Yes, we did, and learned a lot from you. I hope our trip to Jerusalem will be okay. Did in September. Looking forward to spending more time with you. Me as well, David. Let's have fun in Jerusalem in September. I think it's in September. David, is it in September or November? I forget. I apologize. Okay. Chris I. King, welcome. I will do these tests on the Sony 18-105 lens. Many thanks from Bristol. Excellent. Yes. I really hope that that lens actually serves you well, because I don't like telling people to go out and buy new equipment. And because you're coming from Bristol, I believe is a big enough location that they would have a camera repair shop. If not, you might have to send it to London just to get that calibration done. And sometimes lenses, the rear lens element, I think, moves by a millimeter, and that will affect sharpness. And that's why we say that we have to usually send our lenses and camera bodies away to a bigger city to get calibrated. So for example, here, being a Canadian, I send it to Toronto for my lenses to be calibrated if that ever happens. And in the States, you guys have an amazing amount of resources to send your camera lens to get calibrated, because you have so many big cities like New York and LA and so on. Lloydify, welcome. Esther, good to see you again. Prerna, I apologize, my friend. Prerna Golani 4, welcome from India. So great to see my Indian friends. A good camera to upgrade from the Canon EOS 1300D. So yeah, I would always advise, if you have lenses that you like, then you stay within your ecosystem. That means you would stay within Canon, because the EOS system does really well with keeping the cameras, the lenses compatible. Now it's true that Canon and Nikon, when they added their new mirrorless systems, that sometimes you do have to have an adapter. And while that's not ideal, I understand why they had to do that. So, but you can still use your Canon lenses. So my question to you would be, do you have a collection of Canon lenses? Then if so, stay within your Canon ecosystem. And then there's two ways to go about it. You would simply get a newer camera body that's within your price range, your budget, or you buy a better Canon that's still within your price range, but it's used. It's a used camera. So, for example, in India, I'm not sure what country or what city you're from, but the bigger cities would have reputable used camera stores. And so it's interesting because it's a trade-off. You can get the better camera for the same price used, but then you don't have as much of a warranty than buying a new, cheaper camera for the same price. And it's always a toss-up. If you can get a warranty from that used camera store, then usually used camera stores will give you like a 30-day warranty on their work. Make sure that used camera actually works well. And then I may be tempted to get a better quality Canon. You can maybe step up to a 7D or something like that. And a used 7D, because they're a really good camera. And I think they go all the way back to 2014, but still, because the quality was so good on them, or a 5D Mark III, a used, that would be really good. Because they still hold their value and you can get them for much cheaper prices. So I'm not sure exactly, I can give you the exact model that I would suggest. However, stay within budget, buy good used, and that's my suggestion. Really good question. Photos by Shiva, welcome. Do you give lessons in French too? Do you know what, Alessandra? I live in Canada's only bilingual province, New Brunswick. This is home base, or has been home base for a little bit. Yet my French is abysmal. And I can understand French, but I'm too embarrassed to even speak French because it's so bad. I know Japanese far better than I know French. So the answer is no, although I should, because I've been around French all my life. So many of my friends are French, and it's not a lack of being able to practice. It's just a laziness. I am so lazy with regards to learning French. So it's a great shame of mine. Hi Mark, this is Vishnu from India. Welcome Vishnu, Photon Travels. I hope all is well. And drink a nice hot chai for me because it's very cold where I'm at right now. Gandhi, welcome. Cheers, Mark. Daryl from Chicago. And you know what, Daryl? I really want to get to Chicago. And, you know, it's just such a classic place with the most amazing buildings and, you know, the history of Art Deco. And I just want to visit Chicago sometime, and hopefully it can be very soon. Vagabond Image, welcome. Greece, Greece, Greece. I long for baklava and also Greek coffee. By the way, and I already mentioned this to Soterios last week, is that every day I have my Greek copper kettle and I make my own Greek coffee because I love it. Cynthia says, what is the setup like for low-key photography? For food and for portraits of children. Low-key photography is a little bit tricky because usually you're doing it with a flash. Or you could do it with a direct ray of sunlight, shooting between two buildings or in a window. That would be fine. So for example, if you want a low-key photo of a child, a portrait, then what you would do is you'd wait for the sun to shoot into your window, and you'd have the child or the model or the family member so that the direct sunlight is hitting their face directly. Now what you would then do in aperture priority is radically underexpose. You'd go to the minus side, okay? So, and the reason being is if you don't, then that skin, that face on that person is going to be blown out. That's going to be meaning that it's pure white. We don't want that. So this is what you'll do. Allow the child or your family member or your friend or your girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, your husband, wife, they are in the direct ray of sunlight. You underexpose by going to the minus side in your exposure compensation dial. And that is called low-key photography. This is very dramatic light because one light source is hitting it and the rest is pure black or at least very dark. Okay? Now, otherwise, low-key photography is done in the studio, and it's done with what we call a strobe. And a strobe is like a flash. It is a flash, essentially. And you have that hit of light directly on the person, and the rest is either no light or very minimal fill light. And that provides really dramatic light. And you find that in fashion photography quite a bit, and it looks really good. So that's my suggestion, Cynthia, for you, is that you make use of it for free by using direct sunlight. September around the 20th, David says. Yes, the Jerusalem photo workshop that I'm doing, says David, who's coming with me, is September the 20th, and you can find that information on my website, markhemmings.com. Thank you, David. Welcome all the new people. This is a Q&A session. Let me know where you're from, what country, and also any photo questions that you have. I'm happy to answer them. No question is silly. I love all questions. And if I don't know the answer, I will definitely tell you, because I don't want to lead anybody astray. Teacher Rian, welcome. Nana's Photos, welcome. DP Kara. Photo Canuck, I have a Nikon D750. What would be a good landscape lens to purchase? Currently I have the 70-200 2.8 and a 50mm prime. Thinking about the 24-70 2.8. Yeah, that's a really good one. The 24-70 2.8, I used to have it back in the day, and it's excellent. And the reason that's probably a wise purchase is because the 24-70 is going to give you... Okay, let me back up. I'm now rethinking this. You already have the 50mm prime. And now I'm wondering if the 50mm prime plus the 24-70 is going to be a duplication. I am now going to back up and suggest a 20... Let me think here. If you love landscapes, you may be inclined to get a 20mm prime lens or a 24mm prime. Now, the reason I say this is purely for budget. I don't know what your budget is. If your budget is such that the 24-70 2.8 is not a problem, then yeah, go for it. However, if that, because it's a pricey lens, if that is sort of going over budget, I'd be tempted actually to go with a 20mm prime or a 24mm prime, which are much cheaper. And don't worry about getting a low f-stop, like a wide open. Get an f2.8 because when you're doing landscapes, you don't care about a fast lens. You don't care about an f1.4 or f1.8 wide angle. It's almost irrelevant because you're going to be shooting those landscapes at f8 or f11. So you can get a really cheap and even a used excellent 20mm or 24mm f2.8, and you're going to get super sharp quality because it's a prime lens. A prime lens, for those who don't know, is a non-zooming lens. They're characterized by being small, lightweight, inexpensive, super sharp, inexpensive, if I didn't say that already, and easy to carry around. They're so easy to carry around because they're lightweight, they're unobtrusive, they're perfect for street photography, and it's not like you have this huge professional super heavy lens carrying around with you. Also, Photo Connect, if you're ever wondering about, or sir, if you're ever doing travel photography or street photography in the future, it's much easier to take those two primes around with you, that 20 for landscape and that 50 that you have, rather than taking the 24-70. So that's my suggestion. I didn't, one or the other, and it's entirely based on budget. Great question. Photon Travels. Hi Mark, this is Vishnu from India. How to clean fungus in lens? Very tricky. What I would suggest is you take it to your local, whatever city that you go to that has the repair shop, then get it done professionally. I've tried to do it myself. It was a failure. So definitely take it to a lens, a real lens camera repair store. Because if you play around with the lens, like taking apart a lens, they are so finely tuned, but even by lasers, that getting it back together is probably not going to work unless you're a professional watchmaker or someone who really understands the complexities of fine-tuned optics and fine-tuned mechanisms. So yes, get that fungus cleaned, that mold cleaned from a repair shop. Okay. I want a camera which is lightweight. Canon bodies are heavy for traveling. True. I have a Canon Zoom 50mm 250 and a kit lens. Okay, so here's a question. I'm just wondering, my of course suggestion for traveling and for starting out and for even getting into advanced amateur work is the Fujifilm X-T200. But then again, I don't want anyone to buy a camera or to leave their camera system just because I suggested it. Now, if you can actually sell all of your Canon gear, if you're not happy with it, and then just get a really small travel camera that's excellent, like that X-T200 by Fuji, then that's great. However, again, I'm really cautious about people buying stuff and going out of budget or going into debt when they don't need to. So, Prayer Nagola, what I'm going to ask you to do is to direct message me, because I want to help you and I want to make sure that you get wise advice. So what I'll get you to do is to send me in detail everything that you have, your camera, the exact model, and all of your lenses. I know you already did here, but I want to move on to get everyone else's comments done. But I want to help you. So send me a direct message, and I will look into the Canon options for you to a better degree. Okay, welcome everybody. Coffee. Yes, Photon Travels, or maybe that's a chai tea for me. Thank you. The architecture is magnificent. Sankara Market, welcome, fellow St. Johnner. Good to see you. Felly89. What is that must-have one lens if you have the Fujifilm X-T4 camera, which can be used for both street photography as well as for landscape photography? Thank you. Yes, I'm happy you asked that. This is from Tutan Barui. I suggest the 23mm f2. And the reason why I suggest this is because I use the 23mm f2 WR, that stands for water resistant, or weather resistant rather. And it works great it works perfectly for street photography because it translates as a 35mm field of view in the full frame world. And that's really perfect for street photography. Now, it's also really good for landscapes. Now, it's true that professional landscape photographers would take issue with me saying that. They would say, well, Mark, that lens is still a little bit, you should actually go wider than that, like maybe an 18mm. And while that's true, to a certain extent, I still get good landscapes with my 23mm f2. And if you were to ask me, I only have budget for one lens, and I want it for both landscape and street photography. That is my answer. 23mm f2 WR from Fujifilm. It's a great lens. It's almost flawless. And by the way, if anyone doesn't know the difference between APS-C size lenses and full frame, because the Fujifilm system is APS-C, smaller chip, that 23mm f2 that I'm talking about is actually the equivalent view of a 35mm lens. Okay. Hello, Mark. Hello there, Mark. How to clean fungus in lens. Yeah, take it to your camera repair shop. It's a disaster to try it yourself. And the reason why I know this is because I know from experience. Yari Maya, welcome. And to all of my friends who have very obscure Instagram names, I apologize. I'm messing them up. I chose Mark Hemmings as my Instagram name, and I was really happy to get it. It's hard to get your own name these days. Cynthia says, Photo Canuck, there is an older AFD 24mm on sale on eBay. AFD works on the D750. Thank you, Cinderbug. That's excellent advice. Soterios, what's the best Canon lens for 7 EOS D for street photography? Yeah, so what I advise is that for the 7D, for example, or for any Canon, is that you're looking for a 35 millimeter field of view. So by the way, for those who use the 7D, that's an APS-C. If I recall, it's an APS-C size camera. So that would be a cropped sensor camera. And that means that you're looking for Canon's 22 millimeter or 23 or 24 millimeter lens. I forget which one it is. And that will give you a 35 millimeter field of view. And this is really good for street photography. Now, one thing that's really important is when you're dealing with street photography, you don't really care about the expensive, fast f1.4 lenses. They're almost irrelevant because you're going to be shooting your lenses at something more like an f2.8 or f3.5 or f4.5 or f5.6. And the reason being is that in street photography, you're not really caring so much about background blur, like creating background blur. Now in portraiture, you definitely want the low f-stop numbers. That's why you'd buy a lens that has like an f1.8 or a really low f-stop number in order to create background blur. But in street photography, and especially in landscape photography, you don't even care. You're going to be shooting at f8 for landscape photography. In street photography, a lot of times they shoot at f5.6 or something like that because background blur is not as critical. So I would say buy an inexpensive f2.8, 24 millimeter or in that range for your Canon 7D, and you'll be all set for street photography. Great question. Gail, hi Mark, I just wanted to ask, can you use Canon lenses on your Fujifilm bodies? Okay, there are companies that do adapters. Metabones is one, so do a Google search for Metabones, that's Metabones. They're a very good company. And when you're doing that type of experiment, and I'll be honest, I don't know, Gail, because I only use Fujifilm lenses. But if there is a company that does it, it'll be Metabones. The only issue is that the communications between the lens and camera won't be as effective as a true Fujifilm lens on a Fujifilm body, but it's quite possible. And if anyone can answer, Gail, more accurately than I can, feel free to add your comment below. Okay. Gilles, what do you think of the best way to make black and white pictures? Post-process color pictures or take them with the black and white option in the camera? I always do post-processing. And it's best practices, and most pros do that as well. The only difference is Leica has this crazily expensive but beautiful camera. And it's a I forget the name of it. I think it's just called monochrome. And anyway, it only photographs in black and white. And that's the only exception that I would do. Any other time, I would definitely suggest you shoot in color. Now, here's an interesting fact. It doesn't matter, to be honest. Because if you're shooting in RAW, I'll use my Fujifilm for an example. If I switch to black and white capture in my Fujifilm and I'm using RAW, it doesn't matter at all. I'm going to see the picture in black and white. It's captured in black and white, but it truly, in a sneaky way, is actually truly still capturing in color. It's just that I see it in black and white on the back of my screen, and when I pop it up into Lightroom, it looks black and white. But in reality, the color is still there, and I can always revert to color. So, to be honest, it doesn't really matter. However, best practices is that we make our black and whites after the fact in our editing software. Really good question. Okay, good. Oh, gee, I just flipped the camera there by mistake. Let me pop over to question mark. Andreas, sorry for the delay. Hi, Mark. I follow your advice and get the A7 for $700. Well, that's a good deal. And it was great. Andreas Bondum, I'm really glad that worked out. You'll enjoy it. And by the way, I'm always an advocate, as Andreas just brought up, of used gear if you buy it from a reputable camera store. And if you live in a big city, you're all set. If you live in a small city, then there's a little bit of more of a risk. I understand that. But there's nothing worse than being in debt to a camera that, let me back this up. Your enjoyment of photography reduces if you're stressed out about the debt of buying that camera that was beyond your budget. That's why I think that I'm just as happy to teach iPhone photography or Android photography for those who want to, learn photography on an Android because, the DSLRs are out of budget. Great, but then, people have a budget for the highest level of professional gear. Great. Just don't go into debt, too much debt, or any debt in your search for gear. Because I want you guys to stay creative and happy, and debt tends to take the shine off of the creative aspects of photography. Okay, Amurimi, what would you suggest to learn prime lens photography? Yes. Now, if you're talking about what lens, I would suggest the 50 millimeter lens. And you can get the 50 millimeter usually in f2.8, f1.8, f1.4. It doesn't matter, to be honest. Just get whatever's in your budget and whatever's available. And that prime lens, that 50 millimeter, is what I learned on. I actually learned all my photography on one lens. It was the 50 millimeter f1.8. My grandfather gave it to me on a classic Nikon EM film camera. This was long ago, 1997 probably. And I thoroughly appreciate learning on one prime lens. Also, what I would suggest is that you go through my YouTube page. That's Mark Hemmings Photography School. And I have a ton of resources for you for free. And also, by the way, a lot of my photos taken in this Instagram feed, my profile, are taken with a 50 millimeter prime lens. And I talk about that a lot. So what I'll get you to do as homework is to go through my Instagram feed and take a look. A lot of them are with a 50 millimeter prime lens. And you'll be able to see how I talk about that lens and the advice I give. Excellent question. Okay. Sorry, everybody. I'm just going to scroll through here. Make sure I don't miss anything here. Let's see here. Okay. Hi, Mark. Nehemiah here from Kenya. Excellent. Jambo, Kenyan way of greeting for the Taurus. Excellent. I hope to be able to hear that in person someday. I recently had problems with the autofocusing of my one and only 18 to 55. Could you know where the problem is? Most likely, the problem is it's too dark out, or you're photographing a scene that doesn't have much contrast or texture, like a blank wall, like a white sheet, or you are on AFC instead of AFS. So let me go through each one, Nehemiah. Dark, and when it gets dark out, your camera struggles to focus. And this is because you have the kit lens. It's not your fault. It's not the lens fault. It's just normal. If that's the case, then I want you to flip to manual focus, and you'll find that on the front of your camera. Second, whenever you focus a sheet, focus on something that doesn't have much texture. I'm trying to find something. Actually, this is a bad example. I'll open my T. So let's just say that you are focusing here, which doesn't have much texture. Your camera is going to struggle with getting the focus, because cameras read or understand or see focus based on texture or contrast. And that's why your lens would have no problem focusing on the lattice work on my deck. It would be no problem because there's a lot of texture and there's a lot of contrast. The third thing is you may have accidentally set your autofocus to continuous instead of single. So look on the front of your camera. AFS is what you want. AFC is not what you want. You only want AFC when you're doing sports photography, or in your case, because you live in Kenya, you may go on safari, and if the animals are moving quickly, then yes, you'll want AFC. Otherwise, use AFS. Those three things, if you tackle those, you will probably see that the lens focuses quite well. If that fails, then you may have to look at taking your lens and camera in to get serviced. It could be a problem where your lens needs to be calibrated, and they will know that in the camera store. Thanks for the question. Hi Mark, one more query. As X-T4, by the way, if anyone doesn't know this is Fujifilm X-T4, is the new model from Fujifilm. I was looking for this model, but do you think if there is any other former model which is better than the X-T4? No, the X-T4 is the cream of the crop. Now, in saying that, the X-T3 is brilliant. It is amazing, and you can get good deals on the X-T3 now. They have open box, overstock, unsold, used. If you can get an X-T3, you're going to get a good deal. So don't be afraid of getting the X-T3 because the quality is amazing. It's water resistant. And the reason I know this is because my X Pro 2 is a brilliant camera still. Actually, I don't have the X Pro 2 anymore. I sold it just a week ago to a friend of mine. But even the X Pro 2 has the most stunning photos I think that I've ever seen. That means that your X-T3, if you can get that used, or an open box or whatever, it's a winner, and you're gonna get it for a good deal. Now, if you have the budget for the X-T4, brand new, then even better. It's an amazing camera. You can't go wrong. So I hope that helped. Sim Singing, welcome. I only have 2 minutes left, everybody, so just throw in a question. And then I have to bid you all adieu. How do you walk and shoot if you just handhold the camera? That's a good question. And you are not looking at the viewfinder. What settings do you use? Perfect question. This is from Lucy Wang. Lucy, so what I do is, because I shoot when I'm walking, I have my camera set up aperture priority f2.8 or f3.5, a low f-stop, just to make sure that if I look, see a photo down the alleyway, and if it's dark, then I'll be able to do fine. Auto ISO. I use auto ISO when I'm doing street or travel photography, and aperture priority, and that combination serves me extremely well. And what I do is I actually use a wrist strap. I don't use my camera around my neck, and my finger is always on the shutter when I'm walking down the street. So my wrist strap is protecting the camera from falling out of my hands, and I'm holding my camera with a normal grip, and my finger is always on the shutter button. Even if I don't see anything worthy of taking a picture, it's always ready. And then when I see something, I instantly go, take the picture, and I have it within 1 second. I have the photography down within 1 second, I have the shot. And this is purely practice. So that's how I do it, and it works well for me. And that's usually how street photographers do it as well. And we find that a wrist strap is a little bit easier because I find that it's quicker. And it's way easier. Like if I had my neck strap, and I would had my finger walking along like this, I would look like a goof. It would look quite silly. But because I can walk with my arm down by my side as normal, my camera just swaying with my hand, it's always ready to fire, and I just go, and I'm all set. Really good question. Okay, folks, so Instagram up here is telling me that I have to get offline because within 1 minute and 13 seconds they're going to kick me off. So let me see, Soterios, what are the differences between Photoshop and Lightroom? Why do you prefer Lightroom? Okay, I prefer Lightroom because it's easier, has an easier user interface, a UI, and it's easier for me to teach. And it also has almost all of the normal everyday day-to-day features that Photoshop has, and the only difference is that Photoshop allows for layers. If you're a graphic designer or if you're into layers work, then you're going to want Photoshop. However, 99% of the time I'm using Lightroom instead of Photoshop. Awesome question, my friend. Okay, I have to say goodbye to everyone. I hope you all do well, and we'll check back tomorrow. And I don't do this on Sunday, but tomorrow I do plan to definitely come back to see you all. So please join again, and I'll say goodbye. Have a great weekend. God bless. Talk to you later.